One cold winter night, Reuben, faithful to his service as a policeman, carefully followed the routines of the trade. Suddenly he heard a noise that distracted all his attention, and that he attributed to a cat that he thought was walking along the road despite the low temperatures. But he couldn't convince himself with that explanation. He heard it again, and then it didn't take him long to recognize that this song belonged to the cry of a baby coming from a garbage can that, due to the fog, could barely be seen in the corner of an abandoned warehouse with difficulty. He hurried his steps on the frosty pavement towards the sector to check if indeed it was what he was suspecting. When he arrived at his destination in a hurry, he began to dig through the abundant garbage that was inside this public bin while the cries were getting louder and louder. Stunned, he was left to discover a little girl who, when taken into his robust arms, stopped her uncontrolled crying to immediately yawn and remain silent and make a tender smile. The young policeman responded in the same way, thus demonstrating that the intimate contact was mutual between them. "Innocent creature, who did this harm to you? Why have they abandoned you among these filthy rubbish? God forgive them and have mercy on them. But don't worry, because I'll be your protector. You'll never be alone, my little one. What's more, tomorrow I'll carry out the pertinent procedures to adopt you as soon as possible." When he saw the girl up close, the young officer remembered that since he was a boy, he had hardly used reason. He dreamed of being a prominent law enforcement officer, a hero of the nation whose iron discipline would prevent the consumption of acts of disturbance, of public order, intra-family problems, etc. He also took the opportunity to remember once more that one of the happiest days of his life was when he graduated with honors from the beloved Academy of Officers, dedicated his whole life to the service of other people from that very moment. This, without a doubt, was another of those happy days which would remain engraved in his memory, since he'd saved the life of a little girl, abandoned to her death when transferring her to the nearest health services, this time not being carried away by the first impression of the moment. Aware of her situation, he thought conscientiously about the difficult life that the creature would lead under his guardianship, and preferred that an old married couple who could not have children adopt the little girl. This in order for her to grow up healthy with a mother and father. The authorities, unable to find the whereabouts of the little girls, Prince decided shortly after to hand over legal custody to the couple, who, very overjoyed at having managed to have a daughter, took it upon themselves to ensure her roof coat, education, and food to Angelita, the name which she was baptized. Due to the characteristics of his work, he increasingly demanded greater dedication, and as a result of the increase in crime rates in the city as the days passed, Reuben gradually lost the close contact he had with the little girl until she completely disappeared when, a few weeks after getting the adoption, the family wanted to live in the United States because they wanted the little girl to receive the best education in the world. However, the young man never forgot the creature that he found abandoned in the garbage during a freezing winter night. And he always remembered her with that smile that she gave him the moment he snuggled her into his arms to give the warmth she needed to keep her alive. 25 years after what happened, Reuben was still an excellent police officer, and in his power, he had countless awards and distinctions from the city's police department, and he proudly held himself as an example. One night, doing his morning patrol, he went to the gas station to fill up the tank in his work vehicle. But when he was about to do it, he surprised a couple of hooded individuals with hostile intent. Cornering the cashier, observing the scene, he pointed his gun at the robbers. "Stop right there, criminals. Put your hands where I can see them. I repeat, put your hands where I can see them. I already told you, obey." The criminal's response was a burst of shots, one of which of the bullets lodged in Reuben's abdomen. Both criminals, seeing that the officer fell to the ground until he lay face down, fled in an unknown direction. Well, one of the few witnesses to that heated encounter, with the help of two others, took the policeman to the nearest hospital. Given the seriousness of his state of health and the establishment, he underwent emergency surgery by the doctor on duty, who after many hours of surgery managed to save the brave Reuben. The post-operative recovery would have been carried out in complete peace of mind had it not been for the constant and insistent request that Reuben began to make to see the doctor and thank her in person for having saved him. But it was practically impossible, since she was considered the best doctor in the country. All hospitals resorted to her services to heal the most complicated health patients. She even requested her from abroad to carry out a required work, which she traveled continuously. But the agent insistently demanded to see the doctor and asked every morning, afternoon, and night for his long-awaited visit. The nurses, trying to calm his spirits, told him to please not worry about that, because it was most likely that within a week of his recovery in the hospital he would meet her. Of that he didn't have the slightest doubt. The officer must have been happy anyone in his condition would have done it, but he was bummed out that the prominent doctor wasn't showing up. She wasn't even doing it out of courtesy, knowing that one of her patients wanted to meet her. But the nurses explained that she was a specialist with a high demand for operations, a health professional who gave herself completely to working within the most unfortunate patients. One day before he was discharged, the doctor called the hospital where Rubin was admitted to inform them that this time she'd show up without fail, since her schedule is free. But these do not mention it to the patient. She evidently wanted to surprise him after such a long, uncomfortable wait. However, one of the nurses who became close friends with the man couldn't resist the temptation to tell him about the beautiful surprise they had in store for him and found himself in front of it. The lady, realizing her horror, apologized to the agent, and before running out of the room and then through the corridors of the establishment, she asked him to please not tell the rest of the medical team anything. The friend accepted and told her not to worry because it would be a tomb to keep the secret at first. Rubin waited patiently for his savior, but as the hours passed he grew restless. Since His Eminence did not show up at all costs, he wanted to know the cause of the delay and call the nursing assistants and even the doctor. But he remembered that he had promised to keep his friend's secret until nightfall, and when they all lay resting in their corresponding beds, the nurse approached Rubin and, with the utmost secrecy, told him that the doctor was going directly to see him that afternoon, but that just before entering the premises, an emergency telephone call was received on the road, which forced the surgeon go to the hospital, another hospital, to carry out an operation that was still in progress. The officer couldn't believe what he was hearing, and that night he had to give him a dose of painkillers, since the sadness and anger that he experienced with the frustration of his expectations did not allow him to sleep. But before falling asleep, he calmed down his spirits by trying to be empathetic with the professional. The next day, the doctor on duty early released him to continue with his rehabilitating at his house and to attend the checkups to take place in the health facility of the indicated. Perhaps on one of those visits he could meet the doctor. This time, Rubin left the hospital with a mixture of sadness and joy and returned to his home, where he continued to lament for not having met the person who saved his life. When he'd been at home for about a week, and while he was doing physical rehabilitating exercises, the high-pitched doorbell of his house rang. Hearing it, he went to open the door, and when he did, a radiant woman wearing a white apron and a stethoscope around her neck appeared on the threshold. Seeing her, Rubin realized at that moment that she was the person to whom he owed his life, so he let her in so they could talk quietly while sitting in the living room of his house while sharing a snack. "Dear doctor, I want to thank you because thanks to you, I'm still alive. But I don't know how to do it because what you did for me is invaluable. I also want to thank you, Rubin, and also congratulate you for the difficult work you did to help the homeless. Allow me to open my heart to tell you that I am alive thanks to the fact that I, being a little baby, an agent of the law like you, rescued me from the garbage where I lay abandoned during a cold winter night. Thanks to that person, I decided to study medicine and became what I am today, who's dedicated to saving lives. Just like that hero who saved me from the dark clutches of death." The doctor then gave a smile that Rubin instantly recognized and responded with another that the doctor also recognized. They both went back 3 decades in their lives, and without saying a word, just shedding tears of emotion. They hugged each other with great force, with all the love they had for each other. They talked about their respective lives for the entire length of the afternoon. The doctor, among other things, told him that her biological mother appeared when she was 15 years old. She found out that she had left her due to serious alcohol problems that clouded her mind and made her act in the worst way a mother can. Only a week after that reprehensible event occurred, she regained her sanity, and believing that the creature had died due to low temperatures, she decided to enter rehabilitation center from which she left. After a year of intense therapies, she regained her will to live and devoted all her energy to find the whereabouts of her daughter, until finally her life would lead her to reunite with her daughter. Her daughter would tell her the whole story of her and tell her that she would always visit Rubin, the hero who had saved her life.